I want you to ask yourself, how many things do you know that are related to dollars that are consistently proven over and over again for 80 plus years?
You gotta be able to reach in your back pocket and do the work and show up and go to these classes to learn what you're saying.
The whole interest equation, right? That you get all of your interest back by using and borrowing against whole life insurance. You know, I've done that before with myself. So I've bought everything from braces on kids' teeth to automobiles. I started a business, prevented a business failure actually with cash value.
Welcome to the Cashflow Legendz podcast with your hosts Nate, Brandon, and Brock. Remember, our insights are not direct financial advice, so consult with your financial team before making any decisions based on the topics discussed in this show.
Welcome to Cashflow Legendz. We are excited to be able to spend some time with you today. We always like to emphasize we do not take lightly that you are choosing to listen to us driving down the road or giving us some of your valuable time. And our goal always is to provide as much value as possible so you can really just think about how you think as it relates to money and keeping as much of it as you can, and then allowing it to really support the purposes in your life that matter to you the most in your goals and visions. Today, I'm really excited about the guest that we have. I'm going to let Brock introduce him because he's a dear friend of his, and we'll just have a casual conversation and see what comes from it.
Awesome. Thanks, Brendan. John, great to have you today. I'm excited to have you on the podcast because you and I kind of have similar stories. You're just a lot further along than I. Your dad was in the business and with the same system you got brought into and all the fun stuff that I get to go through right now. And so you also have quite the big background when it comes to infinite banking and knowing Nelson Nash. You've got a big background when it comes to things like the LEAP process, when it comes to currents, when it comes to all things surrounding whole life insurance and your deep history with it. I'm glad that we get to talk to you with it today.
Yeah, glad to be here, Brock.
Awesome. Well, why don't you kind of give us a little bit of background of John Baker and how you got here today?
Whew, that goes a long way back. As you mentioned, my late father, Norman Baker, had been in the insurance business for years and really specializing in estate planning. So Dad would do massive deals back in the day. I actually went with him and picked up a check one time down in Freeport, Texas, of all places, down on the coast. And the check was for $2.5 million. That was the annual premium on 6 lives. So, I mean, that was back in, I'm going to say 80, I was in college, so 86. So,
Some big money.
Yeah, do the math on that today. That's a big deal. And, growing up, he used to say, don't come into the business. He really discouraged me from coming in because he knew at a young age I couldn't do what he did, right? That took years of training, experience, failure, and he finally perfected his craft. And then he actually ran into a guy that told him he was doing it all wrong. And that really turned him upside down. I don't know if we can mention names here, but I'm going to go ahead. He ran into Bob Castellone, and Bob is the creator of the LEAP system. So Dad goes back, starts preparing spreadsheets to prove this fellow from New Jersey wrong. And he actually proved that the math was right. And, this gentleman was saying things like, don't compound interest, don't put your insurance in a trust, don't pay your home off early, all the things that my dad was doing. And, again, when he put the math to the framework, the framework and the math actually worked out. And so that kind of started a software venture and all the above. So, where do I fit in on that? That actually gave me an entry point where I actually could come into the business because Dad just totally retooled his practice. So I started with Texas Farm Bureau, and I wanted to kind of just get away from the family business there. They had my brother-in-law and sister, my dad owned a casualty agency. There was a lot of family in one spot. We all loved each other, but it didn't mean we always got along. So looking back, Brock and Brandon, I can't remember really not being in or around the financial services business or the insurance business. Kind of sell that route. We used to hang out at an old gas station there that a buddy of mine owned, and I was down at the gas station one day, and a buddy showed up, and he said, "Man, you need to be in the equipment business." And I'm like, I'm all ears. I had my insurance license, I was just barely making it. Probably not listening to my dad and my brother-in-law, as hard-headed as I was. And so I went to work selling John Deere heavy equipment. and I absolutely loved it. And I moved from John Deere over to Cat, and absolutely loved that. Went through, so I did about a 10-year stint there away from the business, and always maintained licenses and things like that. Gave light insurance advice to buddies. That came to an end, and I thought, boy, what am I going to do? So I actually went back with my dad, started doing software schools with Dad and Todd Langford all over the country. We would fly out on Sunday night, teach Monday, Tuesday, fly back home, get a new set of clothes, and go do it again on Thursday, Friday. I mean, we were busy. And so that's the blessing to the whole equation there, because I got to do a ton of seat time running the computer while, Todd Langford, absolutely a mentor, Dad, absolutely a mentor,
And John, Todd, if they don't know, is the creator of Truth Concepts.
Todd and my dad are the creator of Truth Concepts.
Got it. Perfect.
So, that gave me such a valuable education on really how to do things. So that was, that grounded me. And, from there I went on and really started in personal practice. And it was amazing looking back on that. So
That's awesome. And what about your history with the infinite banking or Nelson Nash, any of that?
Yeah, I have to think back hard on that. So my brother-in-law, Ricky, the owner of the casualty agency, he would do some life insurance, but he discovered, and I really don't know how, he discovered Nelson. Dad knew Nelson before Ricky did, just being in the circles. I knew who he was, but he'd really never been around him. So Ricky's responsible for really bringing Nelson in, starting to do seminars. He was doing well, so I started to do seminars with Ricky and Nelson as well. Gosh, I've flown airplanes with Nelson. I've got a lot of buddies in the aviation business. And one had just taken delivery of a brand new King Air 200, and really a nice airplane, hold about 10 people. And it was common for people to do a little hamburger run, right? So you run to the next town, which Nacogdoches to Lufkin, 17 miles. And so we did a little hamburger run to Lufkin, Texas in that King Air 200. And Nelson flew it down there, flew it back. He's an old aviator. He never missed a lick. So we're coming back into Nacogdoches and about to land, imminent. So I'm in the back. Mr. Jones is in the back. Mary, Nelson's wife's in the back. Ricky's in the back. And Clay and Nelson are flying. And we're low and slow, getting ready to land. And the airplane rolled up on edge. And I thought, oh boy, we're fixing to meet Jesus right here, because you just don't do that low to the ground. And Nelson righted the ship and landed. And when we got on the ground, we were like, what on earth happened? Apparently a bunch of buzzards were hanging around the airport. And Nelson knew better than to, hit one of those things. And so he rolled the airplane up, missed the buzzards, and we're still here today. So
nice. That's awesome. Well, so John, one of the things that, you've been now in personal practice for how many years?
Oh, over 30.
Okay. So you've had a lot of experience of seeing things that have changed throughout time. What have you noticed stays constant through that time when it comes to planning with your clients?
Whole life insurance has withstood the test of time. That's a fact. But when you look at whole life insurance and you look at the different, I'm going to call them planning disciplines, right? You've got LEAP, you've got Circle of Wealth, you've got Cornerstones, you've got Infinite Banking. You've got these different groups of people that all really believe in what they do. The underlying thread is that most of those people actually provide whole life insurance to their clients. And there are some other products that are in there that you can like or dislike, but it's a financial tool, right? The latest, and you don't see much innovation in the insurance world. I mean, for years, there are product changes and product enhancements and things like that come along, but they're not big earth-shattering events. But the biggest financial innovation I've seen in the last 10 years is actually Currents. I mean, Currents is a game changer to teach people a structural solution to where money goes first. It's amazing, and it's doing amazing things in my life. It's doing amazing things in my client's life. I'm just not. I'm guilty of not spreading the message enough, and I'm working hard to change that.
Yeah, it's a good system, that's for sure.
John, how do you, when you're interacting with somebody on Currents with all of your knowledge and history that you just shared with us with knowing Nelson and flying in a plane with him and having a phenomenal story and the infinite banking concept, and then knowing Bob and your dad being a part of, True Concepts and all of those models that have really been eye-opening to me. In the last 2 years, Leap is new to me, and so is Current. So it has been baptism by fire, coming from more of an infinite banking approach first. So when you're visiting with somebody that's newer to all of these ideas, if somebody's listening right now and they go, have a little familiarity with whole life, maybe know about becoming your own banker, maybe heard about Leap, but I really have no clue how all this goes together. How would you kind of frame that for anybody that's new and coming to the conversation of like, why is this important to understand in my own personal economy or my own business economy if I have both going on simultaneously?
Brandon, and again, I've done all of those, all of the disciplines that we talked about, I have done. I actually like all of them because, again, that underlying thread of whole life insurance. But what I'm doing recently is really focusing on protection, right? I mean, I have a branded belief that you should have your human life value in insurance and protection, right? That's my absolute fundamental belief. And that could be with a combination of whole life. It could be with a combination of term. But then we go on to think about, if we're going to put money in some place, right? Money has to reside somewhere. That's Nelson Nash 101. And if it resides somewhere, shouldn't we pick the place that has the most benefits where we put our dollars? So if we examine that, that would be guarantees would be at the top of the list for me. Accessibility to money, accelerated, ability to take money if you have some kind of a long-term care or critical illness need, death benefit, the list can go on, waiver of premium, right? So, am I part of a mechanism that pays my premium if I become disabled? So when you look at all the characteristics that you would want for an ideal plan or an ideal product, it screams whole life insurance. So that's really, Brandon, what I start with, fundamental belief. Not everybody is a candidate for whole life, but I think everybody can be a candidate for whole life if you coach them up, right? Not everybody has the cash flow to potentially do that. And I think that's, where Currents comes in as well, teaching people how to save additional money. Now, where do we put that money for safekeeping? It's not good advice. And I'm a financial advisor. I manage money, but it's not good advice for somebody to, especially starting, just starting to save in a fund that can absolutely get away from them. It can go down. There are fee charges and things like that. So that's the core belief is again, money's got to reside somewhere. So have 3 to 6 months worth of liquid savings, and then let's figure out where to put the lion's share for safekeeping.
John, you're a financial advisor. You manage money. You also know how whole life insurance works. It's a foundational piece to your planning. Before I get to what I'm going to ask, who do you typically work with in your practice?
I really have two, in the insurance world, it's funny, that question, most people will pop up and say, I work with business owners. I work, Brock, with anybody that's serious about their money. I really don't have and haven't stayed just in the business owner market. So there are, I've worked with medical device reps. I work with California firefighters. I'm in a niche there that's pretty cool, and business owners and W-2. So I work with everybody, but my criteria is that you are serious about your money.
Yeah, I like that. And it, something that reminds me, we were in a study group of yours yesterday, and the question came up, if you only had one product that you could choose to run your financial life, which one would you choose? And when you list out all those ideal characteristics, there's only one that comes out that says it would be this one, right? So now that we kind of know your background, who you work with, all the planning that you do, what are some common, and we might press some buttons here, what are some common misconceptions or things that you see people get wrong when it comes to implementing whole life insurance into their financial life? And don't hold back, John.
Let it rip.
I have a firm belief that, as competent planners, that we help the client design the whole life contract to make it better for them, right? So a custom tailored design. So I do not buy into the camp that whole life insurance has to be max funded. I do some max funded stuff. But, again, that expertise needs to fall on me. right, to design a plan, because the person I'm working with, they may have substantial assets already, right? So I may design a whole life plan that's all base. Am I wrong? No, I'm not wrong, because the death benefit is the permission slip to spend the other assets at an accelerated clip. So I don't necessarily believe that I have to overfund that. Now, if I'm working with somebody young and they want to be conservative and they want to build a pool of capital and they want liquid resources and they want to do infinite banking style, God bless them. I'll help them with that too. So I like to have more of a freelance. I like to rely on my skill set, my knowledge, to figure out how to best serve my client and how to put together a plan that makes sense for them. Does that answer your question there, Ron?
It sure does. Are there any more misconceptions or things that people get wrong that you see?
Yeah, I mean, you asked me not to hold back. The whole interest equation, right? That you get all of your interest back by using and borrowing against whole life insurance. I've done that before with myself. So I've bought everything from braces on kids' teeth to automobiles, started a business, prevented a business failure actually with cash value because of liquidity. Recently purchased a franchise. That's a whole different story for my middle son to work in. So yeah, I believe that access to capital is absolutely key. But whole life insurance is a savings vehicle. It is conservative, it's safe, but it doesn't have magical power, right? It doesn't create things out of thin air. Borrow against it, make an investment with it. Don't buy a barbecue pit with it and expect the barbecue pit to be free. I actually heard that recently. So I use that as an example. Yeah. So this young man borrowed the money to buy a barbecue pit, and and over time, this is supposed to be a free transaction because he is going to get all of his principal and interest back. Well, let me tell you something. It just doesn't work that way, right? There's a cost to it. There's a cost to borrowing, and So anyway, I could go deeper, but I'll stop with that.
Hey, John, on that point, I really like that you're bringing this up because would you agree with this thought? So I'm only 7 years into this, coming from a background that had nothing to do with this. Okay, I had no clue that any of this even existed. So like it's been eye-opening in 7 years. First, that we have to come to this realization, like you just alluded to, that everywhere our dollar goes, we have a partner of some sort. We have a contract of some sort, whether it's a coffee can underneath our bed, we still have a contract with ourselves and who we're exposing that to. Would you agree, since you and you're going all the way back to your dad, how many years is that really between the two of you put you guys in this world? Between your dad to you, how many years total would that be roughly?
Oh, I mean, my dad was in the business for a good 50 years plus. Yeah.
Okay. And you've been in for 30 something?
Roughly 30. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got 80-ish years of experience, and you're pointing to whole life. So immediately, any of our listeners or watchers watching, I want you to ask yourself, how many things do you know that are related to dollars that are consistently proven over and over again for 80 plus years? And so when you mentioned you want people who are serious about their money, is it fair to say you mean that they are going to be willing to be embracing the idea of rethinking their thinking, like Nelson said, and continuing to want to learn and really understand how things operate and not just be told what to do? Is that fair to say that you're looking for?
Absolutely fair to say. And I
Okay.
can say this in a genuine, honest statement. I'm about to be 59 in October, and I'm still trying to figure out how to buy more whole life.
I love that. All right. So you've seen.
So John, you mean that you didn't just buy one policy and you were done for the rest of your life?
Negative.
Yeah.
Negative. Yeah. No, it's, again, it's where do you put your money initially that has the most benefits? There's no other financial device, product, system, or even scam that has multiple benefits like life insurance does.
So you've seen this industry for a long time. In the short 7 years that I've been, I feel like I'm in the tidal wave of a shift, because right when we started, it was kind of hard to find some information, a smidge. And now it is like everywhere. And so I've said recently to many people, this emphasizes the importance of interacting with somebody who's living it and not selling it. And they go, well, what does that mean? And I say, that means that you have to know for sure that whoever you're vetting, They can show you through their words and their actions and their relationships that they've lived this and they're connected to people who've lived this for a long time. Because there is so much social media out there, and we use social media too. I don't think it's a bad thing, but there's so much social media out there that is really applying get rich quick, treat them and street them. There's magic in this. You're a perfect example of the barbecue pit. We have partners anytime our money moves. The question is how much does it benefit us or someone else? So are you finding in your world that you see more now misinformation with familiarity of the concept, but it's half true still?
Definitely. And I think social media is a big part of that. Social media, lets this video or this podcast go out to thousands of people. So these social media influencers are man, they're crazy, right? And the things that come out of their mouth are even crazier. And let me back up on the barbecue pit. I'm not opposed to borrowing against your whole life to buy a barbecue pit. It's just not free. You don't get anything back in return. You've got to repay. Now you've got to fill that hole in your policy loan, right? You've got to put that back, or you should put it back, I should say. You don't really have to, a whole nother can of worms, but you should repay that so that you repurpose that capital.
And you're alluding to right there, Nelson's don't steal the peas from becoming your own banker and having a plan for every dollar that flows through your life, or it will have it planned for somebody else's pocket to benefit them.
Yeah. I think the statement that clears that up, Brandon, is you don't borrow from yourself. I hear that all the time. So, there's mentors out there like, Brock's dad, Trent, Todd Langford, my late father, have correct language. Because my dad used to say, boy, if you make an error, right, you're going to pay. That was just the way that we were brought up. Trent mentioned it yesterday. One of the common themes that we all have, even as long as we've been in business, right, we're continuing to pay for education. And we're not afraid to reach our back pocket to pull our wallet out and invest in further education. So people like Trent, my ex-father, Todd Langford, Don Blanton, all of these, the singers, Jason and Art Sanger. I mean, these people are pouring their souls out. And then there are people that ignore that kind of thing, kind of wing it, go on their own, take an idea, take it to market, and really not know what the heck they're doing. So we see that in our business, and it really pains me for people to, I don't know. I don't think that they're doing it really intentionally, but the way that they talk, the way that they present product is without framework, it's without solution, and it's without knowledge.
And I would say without the diligent work that goes behind it, right? Something that, I was reading in Proverbs today, Proverbs 12. It talks multiple times about the fact that you have to be a diligent worker, not just a worker, not following worthless pursuits. And, I was in that conversation too. And it's like, most of these agents, especially the guys on, we'll call them TikTok, that might work for a company that might be multi-level marketing, that might be all over the world, and they might work in the financial industry, and there might be a big group of people that, they got these young guys putting these posts on TikTok that are saying things, and I'm sitting here thinking, there's probably no way that they have actually done the work or are using the policies to which that they're talking about. Because I've trained some of those guys when they try to want to learn more, and I can tell you most of them are either broke or they think, or what somebody says, they're all flash and no cash. It's you gotta be able to reach in your back pocket and do the work and show up and go to these classes to learn what you're saying. Like, it's no secret. We talked about this on one of the other podcasts. I've put multiple 6 figures, almost 7 figures in coaching and groups, study groups for myself of, hey, how do we learn these processes? How do we grow in these? And as you do that, you start really learning that when it comes to these life insurance contracts, it's not about the recipe. It's a lot more about the quality of the ingredients of what's happening. John, you said something that I think we should go further into. You're about to be 59, and yet you're still trying to figure out how to buy more whole life insurance. Brandon talks to, Nate talks to a lot of younger people about, the importance of, you're not just buying one policy and you're doing it for forever. You're buying multiple policies and doing them for a long time. And it's not, hey, how do we max fund it as much as we possibly can and cut the premiums off by year 10? So why would we be trying to buy more life insurance at your age?
Well, I mean, you have the fundamental belief of protection, number one. As income goes up, right, it gives you increased capacity to buy. And this is where currents comes in. Currents absolutely traps additional income through the reservoir account. And then you have to ask yourself really only a couple of questions. Once a quarter, Dave Mozika teaches to have a calibration session. So as the reservoir builds, do you let it ride? Do you let it stay in the reservoir? Do you spend it, or do you create an additional cash flow engine? Those are really the primary three questions. Most people choose to create an additional cash flow engine. So as income rises, it gives you additional opportunity to buy life insurance, whole life insurance. And so throughout my career, as income has gone up, expenses, go down, right? You got the kids through college and such as that. I still have one at Texas A&M. So that increased capacity, again, money's got to reside somewhere. And I want to use the system and the product that creates the most benefit.
That's right. And so if our money is going to reside somewhere and we're choosing whole life insurance, but you said earlier, John, we're not getting that interest back. Why the heck would we be doing the whole life insurance if we're not getting the interest back when we borrow against it?
Right now we're in an anomaly, right? So life insurance cash value loans are a whole lot better than going to the bank, right? So this is the first time in recent memory that you can borrow against your whole life policy for, let's call it 5%. Some companies may be 6%. Go down to commercial bank and get a loan and see what that thing is, right? So this is one of those times where, boy, pretty cool to have some dry powder, some capital, and it not all be loaned out to buy a bunch of stuff, right? So capital for stuff is one thing. Capital for opportunity, that's how you get ahead.
So, Brandon, do you have any more questions? I have 2 more.
I want to touch on that cash flow there real quick, and just because I think it all kind of makes together, which you have done a great job of talking. What I find when I get to visit, like Brock alluded to earlier, normally we're working with somebody between 25 and 50. But here recently, in the past 2 weeks, I've interacted with several members, and my parents are one of them who are just retiring. They're around your age. It is so interesting when you have somebody that is serious about their money to talk through how they currently think and know that it's being challenged and they're leaning into it, even though it's super uncomfortable because they've been thinking one way for 30, 35, 40 years. And this light bulb I've seen go off a couple of times. Yesterday with a couple who is really realizing that this dry powder that I'm about to create by funding max protection policies first, and then I'm going to start creating cash flow engines from those to ensure that my living expenses and needs for the life we want to live are going to occur. And that is only going to get better and better if I apply the disciplines of thinking long range, making repayments back to my loans against my policy, all these behavioral things. And it allows them to really realize, and they said this. So what you're really telling me is that I am choosing to take control over the capital in my life to create certainties, to then go create more certainties and rinse and repeat. And I was like, exactly it. And they're in their 50s, and until, bravo to them, a year and a half ago or 2, they were just going to let all the things they've been doing ride, but they could not articulate how they knew for sure they were going to live the life they wanted in the season of life they were most excited about getting to, because they were almost there. You see that often with clients that you work with, like those aha moments. What are some of your favorite aha moments related to cash flow and control?
Yeah, and everything you said, Brandon, spot on there. And let me add one thing to it. So the presence of permanent death benefit unlocks the key, or uses the key to unlock the potential to spend other assets in a different way than what mainstream financial planning teaches. Who wants to have $1 million and take 2.8% out of it for fear they're going to run out of money, right? So I would rather people get into a position, and this is really the key, get into a position where you have the maximum choices possible. That fundamental ingredient is missing from traditional financial planning. So yeah, I think everything that was said is spot on. And then the value, and this is the discount, right? This is what people can't get. The value of that death benefit and the permission slip that it affords. No other financial product other than life insurance, and I'm going to use the broad category of life insurance now, right? So the presence of the death benefit when you retire, permanent death benefit, unlocks that safe, and lets you, it gives you the opportunity. You don't have to do it, but it gives you the opportunity to spend assets at a different pace than somebody that has done buy term, invest the difference, ended up with pretty good wealth, and now they get the 2.8% shoved down their throat. So
And it's crazy to think about, you're going to pay for life insurance premiums, whether you pay for it through premium dollars or lost retirement income.
yeah,
Nobody can escape that.
that's a fact.
So John, again, you've been doing this for a long time. You've been using whole life insurance, other insurances for a long time. And you talked about the things that you've used it for. What are some of the things that you've seen clients use these policies for? Maybe give us some crazy stories, because I've heard some of them, or some, just regular ones that people might use.
Yeah, I've got clients that have seen opportunity and seized that opportunity. One example that comes to mind, and I use this in the stories in my practice. It's again about dry powder and liquidity. So had some clients that bought a nice piece of property, and the property next to them, they got wind that it was for sale. They didn't know it. There was no for sale sign. Well, the property was, I don't know, it was like 1,000 acres. So the client calls me up and kind of out of breath and says, "Hey, Baker, how big a loan can I take, and how fast can I have it?" And I looked it up on the computer, and the value was about $2.3 million. And, we can have that HCH'd into your account, or you can get a check. And the guy said, let's make it happen. And he made an offer to pay cash for the property next to him, and knocked two guys out or families that were in front of him out of the equation. So that the speed in which he could operate got that deal.
That's right. I've heard those type of stories over and over again of why having that dry powder in your policy quickly can take over somebody else and knock them out of the deal.
Had that been in his 401k, wouldn't have been possible.
I want to go to a little layer deeper on this for anybody listening who's never done a real estate transaction. What these guys are alluding to is whole life is liquid, because it's more liquid than if you're going to go get bank financing and go through all the rigmarole of the paperwork and the documentation and the lending and all that, or the 401k, which is going to be the same process. So I had this conversation yesterday with somebody about real estate. I'm like, well, how would you close if you went to the bank, and how fast would that move? And they're like, well, not in 7 to 10 days or 3 to 5 days or 1 to 5 days, depending on the company and the fluidity of it. And I'm like, okay, so you're still in a way better position. What is fascinating is that we always want to compare things based off of what we know. And you guys have alluded to over and over and over again, John, and I've loved this. You're always looking to punch arrival syndrome in the face and see what you can learn that's new, that can help you expand and bring value to the people that you care about and you work with.
So, John, as we wrap up here, you've got a hobby that's pretty cool that not many people do. So why don't you tell us about your hobby and all the rocking that you do before we get out of here?
I'm a woodworker. I think that's what you're alluding to, Brock.
It is.
So I build heirloom quality rocking chairs, and I sell those for $6,000 to $8,000 a piece. It takes there's not any money in it, right? You think, man, that's a pretty good side gig. The hours that each one of those rockers require, 220 hours. So when you do the math on that, it's not that lucrative. And since I've got a good income, I don't have to rely on that to eat. So I use that money to buy tools. So I've got tools, table saws, joiners, routers. I've got a 55-inch drum sander. Those are cabinet shop type tools. So that's my getaway. I go do that, and these rockers are super refined. Sometimes they're frustrating. Because you'll make, and wood's not forgiving, right? You make a little tiny cut in the wrong spot or being just a little bit off, and the whole thing is junk. And I just won't put something out that is not as perfect as I can get it. So I get a little bit of rage every now and then. I cut 2 legs out the last rocker I made wrong. And since I'm by myself, there's nobody in my shop. I get that leg and I hurl it down my shop. I've got a 40 by 60. And I hit the back door, So I threw that thing, I don't know, 45 feet. I was so mad, but it felt so good to do that, right? And anyway, I was able to throw those junkers away and create 2 new legs the right way. But I mean, you're using a dial caliper. Machinists use a dial caliper. So those joints on those back legs and front legs are so precise. You use a caliper, and I don't want to have a glue joint. I want it to look like one piece of wood. But yeah, that's what I do. And it's called a Sam Maloof style rocker. Sam was an absolute artist, and I actually went to your neck of the woods to get training from a guy that teaches how to build those rockers. So.
John, do you have a website that you sell them from, or is it word of mouth, or how do you do that?
Brandon, I can't produce enough for the people that want them. So yeah, no website or anything like that. So,
good for you.
if somebody wants to know what the rocker looks like, go to just Google Sam Maloof and look at all of the things that Sam made. So.
All right, John, you have anything else you want to part everybody with?
Yeah, I would say that if the audience is 2 different audiences that will listen to this, right? So there will be insurance guys that listen to it because you guys have a nice following, and I applaud you guys for wanting to put material out that is factual, that is good, solid material. And then the second would be the consumer. I would tell the consumer, make sure that you do business with people like Brock, like Brandon, that are continuing their education on a regular basis. Because the people that aren't are just simply left out. And then for the insurance advisors, you've got to seek the truth, and you've got to get into these I call them pods of people or these followings that are teaching advisors how to do it correctly. So you want an advisor that does it correctly, and then you want to an advisor to continue their education. I was counting the other day. I've got 4 trips coming up here that are all educational based, and some of them are a long way. I mean, I'm going to New Jersey, I'm going to Las Vegas, I'm going to California, all of these different things, and it's amazing because I see Brandon and Brock at these events as well. So Infinite Banking, think tank, and agents are continuing their education, and that's good. Don't get your education from TikTok.
Correct.
That's some great advice right there to tie this all up. I tell people, if you find somebody on TikTok that you are entranced by, see how quickly you can get access to them or their team and really get to know what they're about. Spend some time doing that. If it's not easy and there's this whole funnel of what you got to pay before you can ever learn anything, it's probably not the route you want to start with as far as learning to implement this.
Yeah, I'm not going to single any names out, but I heard a guy that had sold 2,000 life insurance policies in a year. I don't know how that's physically possible. I mean, I have to count up if I have that many in my career. So,
yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yep. I've heard a few of those things too. And I know about a few of them and what's really going on in the background, and that breaks my heart, truthfully.
Yeah.
That would be 38. That would be 38 policies a week if they worked every single week of the year.
Wow.
Again, that takes a staff like an insurance company has.
And John, one more math thing before you wrap it up here, Brandon. That $2.5 million premium that you talked about, if it was in 1986, if we just took a regular 3% inflation, that would have been $7.6 million today.
The amazing thing with that premium, Brock, is that all of that went into a trust. There was essentially no liquidity to that transaction. It was purely done for estate tax planning. So some of those guys are still alive today.
Wait, so you mean people actually do put life insurance in place for their family that goes into trust and continues to perpetuate?
Yeah, I mean, again, solely designed for paying estate taxes when they graduate, as Nelson says. But look at the law changes, right? So I'm sure, and I know these folks, so they still have a big estate tax problem. I mean, essentially anything over, 22 or 23 million is going to start to be estate tax. So most people are not going to have that problem. But they gave up the use of money, right? So the cash value being in a trust makes it really not usable. There are all kinds of laws and things around that. But these people want to make sure the next generation has the liquidity to pay off the indebtedness. There again, Brandon, one of those partners, right, that they've inherited by having a massive business So they need massive liquidity when that thing changes hands to the next generation so that the business is not disrupted.
John, we're very appreciative of your time and your wisdom and just sharing some awesome stories. And you can tell you really care about the people that you work with and what you're doing. And you said something at the very end about seeking the truth. I think that's a very valuable statement in anything we do, because if we remain in skepticism or it's a scam, no matter what it is, I learned this from Brock's dad, Trent. What that really is insanity. To do the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different result. So, what questions do you need to ask to no longer be skeptical for our listeners out there? Whether you're an agent trying to understand what we do, or you're a consumer trying to understand why is whole life the soundest first place for my dollars to reside, you've shed some really beneficial light on that topic today, and we're very grateful for that. And we look forward to everybody getting to listen to this.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'd love to do it again if you guys will have me.
Absolutely. We can go ahead and plan it. Until the next time, everybody, we hope this brings value to you, and thank you for spending your most valuable resource with us, your time.